You know what's strange about some people at night? While the world slowly powers down, the lights go off, and minds begin to drift, you become more alert. Not because of work, not because of urgency, but because something feels unfinished. The kitchen counter isn't right. The floor feels wrong. The pillow isn't aligned the way it should be. And somehow, your mind refuses to rest until everything is in place. Most people would call this a habit, maybe even discipline. But what if it's not about cleanliness at all? What if this quiet ritual is actually your brain trying to solve something much deeper? This behavior, cleaning or organizing compulsively at night, often gets misunderstood as productivity or preference. But in psychology, it can reflect something more complex, a form of coping mechanism, where your brain attempts to regulate internal discomfort through external control. In simple terms, when your internal world feels uncertain, your brain looks for something it can control, and the environment becomes the easiest target. Research in behavioral psychology suggests that repetitive physical actions, like cleaning, can temporarily reduce activity in stress-related systems, particularly those linked to the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for threat detection. So what looks like tidying up may actually be your nervous system trying to calm itself down. And once you start seeing it that way, the behavior begins to make a different kind of sense.
For many people, a messy environment is not just visually unpleasant, it feels unsafe. Not logically, but emotionally. Somewhere in your past, disorder may have been linked with unpredictability. Maybe your environment growing up lacked stability. Maybe chaos meant tension, conflict, or uncertainty. So now, your brain has learned a pattern. Mess equals potential threat. Order equals safety. And at night, when everything is quiet and your thoughts are louder, this association becomes stronger. Cleaning isn't just cleaning. It's your way of telling your brain everything is okay now.
During the day, there are too many variables you can't control. People, work, outcomes, expectations. But at night, the world shrinks. And suddenly, you can control something. You can decide where things go. You can fix what feels off. You can create a small, predictable system in a world that often isn't. This activates your prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for planning and control, giving you a sense of agency. So the act of cleaning becomes less about the environment and more about reclaiming control over your internal state.
Have you noticed how hard it is to relax when something feels incomplete? That voice in your head doesn't let things go easily. It points out the smallest imperfection. It replays what you didn't finish. It reminds you of what could be better. This is what psychology refers to as an overactive internal critic, often linked to perfectionism. And here's the key. Cleaning becomes a way to silence it. Because when everything is done, that voice gets quieter. At least for a while.
Now, consider this for a moment. What if the cleaning isn't about the mess, but about escaping your own thoughts? At night, the brain shifts into what's called the default mode network, a system associated with reflection, memory, and often rumination. This is when overthinking tends to spike, and your brain looks for an exit. Repetitive physical actions, like sweeping, organizing, wiping surfaces, create a kind of mental rhythm. They anchor your attention to the present moment. It's not unlike meditation, just less intentional. So instead of sitting with your thoughts, you move. And movement feels easier than stillness. Some people can lie down and fall asleep within minutes. Others can't. not because they don't want to, but because their nervous system is still in a state of high alert. This is often linked to chronic stress or long-term psychological adaptation. Your body doesn't easily switch from on to off. So instead of forcing rest, you exhaust yourself physically. Cleaning becomes a bridge, a way to transition from alertness to fatigue. Because for your system, being physically tired feels safer than being mentally restless.
If you step back and look at all of this together, a pattern starts to emerge. This isn't random behavior, it's an adaptation. Your brain, specifically the interaction between the amygdala, prefrontal cortex, and nervous system, has learned to use external order as a tool for internal regulation. And in many ways, it works. You feel calmer. You feel more in control. You sleep better. Sometimes. But there's also a deeper layer. Because over time, this pattern can quietly reinforce a belief that peace must be earned, that rest is only allowed after everything is perfect. And that's where it becomes more than just a habit. It becomes part of your identity.
So, what does it really mean if you can't sleep until everything is clean? It doesn't mean you're just disciplined, and it doesn't mean you're obsessive by default. It means your mind has found a way, perhaps the only way it knows, to create calm in a world that doesn't always feel predictable. And there's something deeply human about that. But here's the question worth sitting with. What would happen if you allowed yourself to rest before everything was perfect? Not because the environment is ready, but because you are enough to stop. Because maybe the real peace you're looking for isn't in the spotless floor or the aligned pillow. Maybe it's in learning that your mind doesn't always need to fix something to finally be still.